It was a quiet Iowa morning, the kind that reminded Walter of the simpler years, before family got complicated. He stood in his kitchen, letting the aroma of black coffee fill the silence. At 63, he had grown used to being alone, but not like this. The ceramic mug in his hand, chipped near the rim, was a gift from his late father. It had survived moves, breakups, even the day his brother died. But that morning, it felt heavier than usual. His phone buzzed. A message from his younger sister, Marie. "You're not invited to the wedding. Victor's family says it's best." He read it once, twice. The coffee in his hand stayed untouched, growing cold by the second. The words carved into him like winter wind on old bones, sharp, sudden, and impossible to block. 7 years. That's how long he had quietly supported her, paid her rent when she was between jobs, fixed her car, put down $5,000 for the venue she'd soon be walking into in a white dress. And now he was being erased, not even with an apology. He sank into the kitchen chair, gripping the mug like it was an anchor. Was this what loyalty became in the modern world? Silence and exclusion? The radiator hummed faintly in the corner, but it felt like the whole house was holding its breath with him. He scrolled back through messages, thank you texts, desperate late-night calls, promises she'd make it up someday. And here it was. Someday had come. Just not for him. What do we do when the people we sacrificed everything for decide we no longer belong? How do we grieve the loss of someone who's still alive? Just not in our life anymore? Walter didn't call Marie right away. He stared at the message on his phone for a long while, then slid it face down on the table. The kitchen felt colder now, even with the steam still curling from the untouched coffee. For a moment, he simply sat there, hands wrapped around the chipped mug like it might offer some comfort. It didn't. Instead, his mind drifted backward to rent checks, car repairs, and bank transfers he never questioned. Marie had always needed something, and Walter had always stepped in. It wasn't just generosity. It was what big brothers did, especially after their parents passed. He had promised his father on his deathbed to look after her, but no promise prepared him for this kind of silence. Later that afternoon, after pacing the length of the house more times than he could count, Walter finally picked up the phone and tried calling her. Once, twice, 3 times. Straight to voicemail each time. He didn't leave a message. He tried their mother's old number next, now belonging to Aunt Ruth. She answered on the third ring with her usual warmth. "Walter, sweetheart, everything okay? Did you know I wasn't invited?" he asked, his voice level but worn thin. There was a pause, a soft inhale on the other end that said more than any words. "It's Victor's family," she said finally. "They're traditional. Said it'd be simpler without any—" She hesitated. "Tension. Tension," he repeated. It tasted like rust on his tongue. "I'm her brother." "I know, hon," Ruth whispered, "but they're just trying to make things smooth. Maybe don't take it personally." Walter exhaled slowly and thanked her. He hung up before she could fill the space with more softness that felt like excuses. Later that evening, he went to the cabinet in his study, pulled open the bottom drawer, and sifted through the folders inside. One caught his eye. Marie, handwritten in capital letters on a worn manila cover. He brought it to the desk, set it down, and opened it. Inside were years' worth of receipts, check stubs, and notes in his handwriting. $275 for her power bill during the ice storm. $600 for tuition when she wanted to go back to school. $5,000 for the wedding venue, the one that now had no seat for him. He stared at the paper trail of sacrifices, quiet and invisible, like the hallway lights he used to leave on when Marie was afraid of the dark. But today, that hallway was dark. He opened his laptop and started a new spreadsheet. At the top, he typed, "Family expenses, not returned." Line by line, he entered the costs. Not to shame her, not to reclaim the money, but to acknowledge that what he gave mattered, even if she didn't say so. As the sun dipped behind the trees outside, Walter sat in the warm glow of his desk lamp, staring at numbers that looked like scars. His name had become a ghost behind hers. On checks, on bills, on dotted lines. He had become the invisible support beam no one thought to thank until it was gone. And now, a question lingered in the quiet. What happens to loyalty when love becomes transactional? The letter had been sitting on Walter's desk for weeks, unopened, slightly curled at the corners, with the bank's name printed in bold across the top. He had brushed it aside every morning, too weary to deal with just another reminder. But that morning something shifted. Maybe it was the silence. Maybe it was the weight of old memories sharpened by Marie's betrayal. Either way, he slipped the envelope into his briefcase and left the house without looking back. Harper and Long Financial Mediation was tucked inside an old brick building on Jefferson Street, the kind of place that had seen better decades but stood firm anyway, like Walter himself. He stepped through the wooden door, greeted by the faint smell of paper and time. Rowena Harper, his longtime legal advisor, was already waiting behind a desk stacked with file folders and sealed envelopes. "Walter," she said, rising with a concerned look behind her glasses, "I'm glad you came in. We need to talk." She handed him a folder, thin, unassuming, but when he opened it, the air in the room thickened. Inside were printed statements with his name stamped across the top, connected to a business he'd never heard of. "Nimbus Edge, LLC," he read aloud. "What the hell is this?" Rowena leaned forward, fingers interlaced. "That's what I want to know. These transactions, they've been made under your name, regular withdrawals, 5 figures at a time, marked as consulting fees and community disbursements." Walter's brow tightened. "I've never signed anything for this. I don't even know what it is." Rowena flipped to the second page, where his signature appeared at the bottom of 3 separate authorizations. The loop of the W, the tilt of the T, it all looked familiar, too familiar. "They forged this," he said, his voice low and stunned. "Someone forged my name." She nodded. "I believe you. But Walter, this isn't a simple case of identity theft. These aren't random charges. They're coordinated, steady, scheduled. And they all lead to the same 2 names, Victor Harmon and Marie Carver." His heart sank. Rowena continued, "It looks like they used your clean record, your financial history, to channel funds into what appears to be a laundering front. I've traced money through fake scholarship programs, dummy charities, even community outreach efforts, all signed under your name." Walter sat back, stunned. "So they used me. Not just my kindness, my credit, my name, my integrity. And if this comes to light the wrong way," she warned gently, "you'll be the first person they investigate." The air in the room felt colder now, like the walls had shifted around him. He thought about the years he'd spent trying to do the right thing, working overtime, helping family, staying honest when it would have been easier not to. "I want to fight this," he said finally. "I don't care what it costs." Rowena looked at him, not with pity, but with respect. "Then sign here," she said, sliding a new document across the desk. "Let's dig. Let's find out how deep this betrayal goes." Walter picked up the pen. His real signature, bold and deliberate, cut across the page, the first of many truths he intended to reclaim. Walter had never liked grand events. Too much noise, too many masks. But on that evening, under the gold-trimmed ceilings of the Westbrook Civic Hall, he walked through the double doors with quiet purpose. The Nimbus Edge charity gala was in full swing, laughter floating like perfume, glasses clinking, and speeches full of carefully crafted words. None of them were true. Walter wasn't on the guest list. That didn't matter. Rowena Harper walked beside him, her heels echoing softly on the polished floor. In her hand was a leather folder. In Walter's coat pocket, a flash drive. At the back of the room, Victor stood smiling, one arm around Marie's waist. That smile faltered when he saw Walter. He leaned toward Marie and whispered something. She turned, and her face drained of color. Walter stepped onto the small stage where a local official had just finished a speech about impact. He didn't wait for applause to end. "Excuse me," he said into the microphone. The room stilled. "My name is Walter Carver. You don't know me. But if you've donated to this organization, you should." Eyes turned. Whispers sparked. "I've been listed as a financial guarantor, a benefactor, a consulting partner for Nimbus Edge," he continued. "That might sound generous, but here's the truth. I never signed a single document." He inserted the flash drive. The screen behind him lit up, spreadsheets of transactions bearing his name, thousands of dollars routed through phony scholarships and community programs, labeled youth outreach, labeled STEM funding, all lies. Click. Next came screenshots of emails. Victor to Wade. "He won't ask questions." Marie to Victor. "Use the scholarship excuse. He trusts us." A long silence filled the room. "I trusted my sister," Walter said. "I trusted her husband. I thought I was helping family. Turns out, I was being used." Rowena stepped forward and handed Victor a sealed envelope. "Victor Harmon, you are under investigation for financial fraud, wire fraud, and identity forgery." Victor's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Two officers moved through the crowd, calm and assured. They reached him in seconds. He didn't resist. Marie stepped back, stunned and pale. Walter looked at her once, not in anger, not in pity, just recognition. A moment between siblings when one chooses the truth and the other is too far gone to reach. As Victor was led away, the music didn't return. No one toasted, no one clapped. Walter turned from the stage and walked slowly through the crowd. No victory speech, no revenge, just the quiet power of a man reclaiming his name. And in that silence he realized something. The truth doesn't always roar. Sometimes it just stands up and refuses to be ignored. Weeks had passed since the gala, since the cameras caught Victor Harmon being led out in cuffs and Marie looking like the stranger she had quietly become. Walter didn't talk about it much afterward, not to the neighbors, not even to Rowena. He simply went back to work, but this time the work was his own. The office space was modest, a two-room building on 6th and Maple, tucked between a closed florist shop and a diner that still served coffee for $1.25. The kind of place Walter had always admired, unassuming but dependable. Above the door, a new wooden sign had just been hung, the Carver Foundation. Below it, hand-painted in smaller letters, "Helping Hands for Tomorrow." Walter stood on the sidewalk, coffee in one hand, keys in the other. The autumn breeze swept leaves along the curb, and for the first time in a long time, the morning didn't feel heavy. Inside, Rowena had already arrived. She was sorting through a stack of envelopes, real scholarship applications from real students. "They keep coming," she said, not looking up, "and every single one of them is worth it." Walter nodded. He stepped behind the desk and opened a drawer. The same drawer where he used to store old bills, loan statements, copies of checks made out to Marie. Now it held only one thing: a pen. It was the same pen that had signed away pieces of his life for others. It had once been cracked, worn thin by years of trust given too freely. But Rowena had sent it to a craftsman in town. Now it was restored. polished, engraved with four simple words: keep it true, keep it real. That day, Walter used it to sign the Foundation's first real batch of scholarship checks. Each envelope had a name, a school, a story. Some of the letters were typed neatly, others were handwritten in shaky cursive. One girl wrote about how her father had walked out and her mother cleaned houses to keep the lights on. She wanted to be the first in her family to go to college. Walter paused over that one. He slipped the check inside, sealed it, and whispered, "You will be." Later that week, they held a small gathering in the front room. Just 10 students, a few parents. No cameras, no podiums, just mismatched folding chairs and a pot of black coffee on a table near the window. Walter stood in front of them, not with a speech, but a short story about a man who lost his way, not because he was weak, but because he believed too deeply in people who didn't earn it. He talked about mistakes and how fixing them doesn't always mean erasing the past. Sometimes it means building something better on top of it. When he finished, there was no applause, just a long, warm silence. And then a hand reached up. The sky was overcast the morning Walter drove back to his mother's house. The old neighborhood looked the same, mailboxes leaning a little, porches cluttered with wind chimes and memories. Some places never changed, others just refused to. He parked across the street and sat for a long moment, hands resting on the steering wheel. In his coat pocket was an envelope. Inside, nothing but a single handwritten note. He crossed the street slowly, the leaves crunching underfoot. The front yard hadn't been trimmed in weeks. The curtains were drawn. He didn't ring the bell. Instead, he walked to the mailbox, the same one where he'd dropped holiday cards and utility payments for years, and opened the metal door with a familiar creak. He slipped the envelope inside, paused with his hand on the edge for just a second, and let it go. The note said only this: "I forgive you. I hope someday you can do the same." No name, no anger, no request for answers, just truth, plain and quiet. He stood for a while at the curb, watching the window, half expecting someone to pull the curtain back, but no one did. That was okay, because for the first time in a long time, Walter wasn't waiting for someone else's permission to let go. He returned to his truck, the door shutting with a firm click. As he pulled away, he glanced once in the rearview mirror. The house grew smaller with each turn, but the weight in his chest didn't grow heavier. It lifted. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. It didn't mean excusing what was done. It meant he was done carrying it. And sometimes that was enough. As we grow older, life has a way of revealing truths we didn't want to see, especially when they come from the people we once held closest. Walter's story reminds us that betrayal doesn't always come with shouting matches or slammed doors. Sometimes it arrives quietly, disguised as trust misplaced and loyalty exploited. But the real lesson isn't about the betrayal. It's about what we do afterward. Walter didn't seek revenge. He sought truth. He didn't try to erase his past. He built something better on top of it, not for recognition, but for peace. And most importantly, he forgave, not to make others feel better, but to set himself free. For those of us in the later chapters of life, this story is a gentle reminder. It's never too late to reclaim your voice, your worth, and your direction. Forgiveness isn't weakness, it's strength. And healing doesn't always come through justice. It often comes through choosing to live forward, not backward. Let go of what weighs you down. Build what lifts others up. That's where freedom lives. "You believed in people even when they didn't deserve it," she said. "How do you keep doing that?" Walter smiled gently. "You start by believing in the ones who do.